After a rough start to his NBA career, Precious Achiuwa blossomed into an essential piece of a Raptors team that won 48 games and was the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. Still at only 22 years old, there is huge potential for the player, so in today's video, I'm going to go through just how far Achiuwa can go in his NBA career and revisit the trade that Masai Ujiri pulled off to acquire the player just over a year ago. This is the master plan that the Raptors have for Precious Achiuwa's career. Let's get into it. What's going on, NBA Raptors fans? It's Jacob here, back with Amateur Hour Sports for another Toronto Raptors YouTube video. On this channel, I bring you the greatest coverage and analysis on the latest Toronto Raptors news. So if you like what you see from today's video, then make sure you are subscribed to the channel. You can help us on our road to 12,000 subscribers, getting pretty close to the milestone. Also, if you find yourself enjoying this video along the way, be sure to drop a like to give that extra bit of support. Only takes you a second to do, but it helps me out a lot. But let's get into our content for today. We are discussing Achiuwa and how the Raptors can turn this player into one of the most lethal big men in the NBA. In the intro, as I said, he is still only 22 years old. That will remain only 22 years old today because he does turn 23 tomorrow, but even as a 23-year-old, there is huge potential for Precious Achiuwa, who was very impressive for the Raptors last season. What I want to cover in this video, kind of revisit how he got to this point with Achiuwa, especially after he didn't start the season very well for the Raptors, what changed, what made him a better player near the end of the season, especially in the playoffs. We're going to go through the trade that actually brought Achiuwa to this team and discuss how the Raptors can mold this guy and get him to the heights that we can kind of expect him to get to at this point. So as far as Achiuwa went on the season, I mean, these stats on the surface aren't that impressive. I mean, you look at the points per game, it's only 9 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game, and the efficiency, the field goal percentage for a big could be better. It's just under 44%, but you really have to like that 3-point percentage at 36%. That is absolutely great to see for Achiuwa. Something he also needs to improve on to get to the next level, really get to the next level, is the free throw percentage. But the fact that he can shoot jump shots, he can shoot threes, bodes well for potentially improving on that free throw percentage, which did improve drastically from his rookie season as well. This was only his second season in the NBA, and you know what? There was a little bit of an adjustment period in his time with the Raptors. I thought in preseason he was spectacular, and I was so excited to watch him in the NBA, but where it kind of went wrong for him initially in that starting role for the team was that he had too much of a burden in terms of ball handling, and I felt like he was more effective when he did less with the ball. Achiuwa's field goal percentages improved drastically the less that he dribbled the ball. He was much more suited to these sort of catch and shoot threats from the outside, as well as just taking it to the rack with authority. Not trying to do too much with the ball in his hands. Get to the rack, get the big finish, because he's a big guy. He's a little bit undersized in terms of his height for a center at about 6'9", but his size and his strength allows him to still get to the rim, coupled with the great athleticism that he has being one of those more undersized players. It all really flipped for him right around the All-Star break, where he was selected for the Rising Stars game. Now, I'll be the first to admit here that I was kind of looking at Achiuwa go into that game like, I don't know. I felt like there could have been some other players that could have gone ahead of him, but once I saw Achiuwa after the Rising Stars game, it was like just such a 180, I felt like. He was just so much more confident when he came back from that, and in the 25 games that he played after the Rising Stars game, he actually averaged over 12 points per game on about 46.5% shooting from the field, which is great, but that 3-point percentage was all the way up to near 40%. And this is crazy for a player who only attempted one three-pointer in his entire rookie season. Now, you might think that, okay, he wasn't a good shooter, he improved that over the offseason, but this guy was a good shooter in college. Like with Memphis, he took 43 pointers and had a decent percentage. This was something that was supposed to translate into the NBA. And after watching this player in college, Masai Ujiri was a huge fan and wanted to draft him. He ultimately went to the Miami Heat. I believe it was at 21st overall in that draft. The Raptors at 29th ended up taking Malachi Flynn, but only a year later, Masai Ujiri got his man. Very curious that the Miami Heat did not use Achiuwa to his full effectiveness, because had they actually used him to the potential that maybe the Raptors used him to, maybe they wouldn't have got as really fleeced in the trade here, because the Raptors just over a year ago at the start of the trade season last offseason, they traded Kyle Lowry in a sign and trade to acquire Goran Dragic, who, we ended up turning into a good player in Thaddeus Young, and also Precious Achiuwa. Now, why this is a little bit of a fleece job here is because this is a sign and trade. And when it comes to sign and trades, you're usually not going to get great value for return because this is a player that could just leave for free. You're just trying to balance out salaries here. So the Raptors move on from Kyle Lowry. Well, Kyle Lowry wanted to move on. I mean, fair enough. We had just had that tank season that Lowry wanted to go to somebody that was perceived to be more of a contender. You know, we're not going to fault the greatest Raptor of all time for that. But in that sign and trade, we pluck Precious Achiuwa, a player that Masai Ujiri had desperately wanted since, like I said, that draft. We enabled Achiuwa to really be the player that he wanted to be, the player that he already was. And maybe there was a little bit of a development from the Nick Nurse school of shooting here, but Achiuwa was a guy who could shoot threes already. We just gave him the possibility of actually using that sort of skill on court, and it was very effective for the Raptors. As I mentioned, he was really a different player after that Rising Stars game. He sharpened up the three-point game a little bit more. He started taking more threes. He started hitting a higher percentage of those threes, and he really simplified the game. We stopped putting the ball in his hands as much, and we more so used him as an interior threat. I think in the playoffs, we really saw him start to sort of blossom as more of a guy who can actually take players on. Like, he was going right at Joel Embiid's throat in some of the games in that playoff series. Like that, like the confidence that he had at the end of the season, if you compare that to the start of the season, it was like it was a completely different player. There was such a leap. There was such growth for the player. And the fact that we saw all that growth within just one season, like much less than one single calendar year, the fact that we saw that much of a development jump for the player bodes really well for the possibility down the line in the years coming up for a player who is about to turn 23 years old. What a genius trade executed by Masai Ujiri. I mean, you know, I don't want to disrespect Kyle Lowry at all here. It wasn't his best season for the Miami Heat. You can blame that for sure. You can blame that on injuries. You can blame that on personal stuff that was affecting him 100%. I expect him to bounce back big time this season. But from what we've seen from Achiuwa with the Raptors, this looks like an absolute steal of a trade here, especially when you consider it was a sign and trade. When you think about sign and trades, like, usually you don't get any sort of value. Like, I always use this example. When the Philadelphia 76ers traded Jimmy Butler in a sign and trade to the Miami Heat, they got Josh Richardson in return. Like not a bad player, but this is Jimmy Butler, and they got Josh Richardson in return for that. We traded Kyle Lowry for a 22-year-old, or at the time, 21-year-old Precious Achiuwa, and the fact that he's made this leap showcases what sort of scouting talent that the front office has, especially Masai Ujiri at the helm of doing all of these things. So what sort of ability can we get out of Achiuwa as he progresses through his Raptors career? We want to assess what his ceiling can be. And we're going to use a lot that we learned from him over the course of this season, his development this season, to try to predict what we're going to see this upcoming season and the seasons beyond that. I think he's going to be destined to that six-man role this season. I think that there should be a conversation about taking Gary Trent out of the starting lineup, using him as a six-man, kind of like Tyler Hero. That's not a downgrade in your role. It's just a different role where we're enabling Gary Trent to have more of an offensive presence and let Achiuwa be that more complementary piece to the starting five. I think that fit makes a little bit more sense and allows Achiuwa to use his best skills to help out, you know, the stars in his team like Siakam, like Scotty Barnes, like Fred VanVleet. But I still think the reality is probably going to be Achiuwa coming off of the bench, where he is going to be a great floor spacer to have off the bench. He's going to be getting a lot of reps with the stars of this team, with the starting unit of this team as well beyond that. And I think we're going to see a lot of times Achiuwa is going to be closing out a lot of these games. Defensively, he is excellent. He plays well above his size on the interior, has the ability to play really, really good perimeter defense as well, moves his feet in a great way, is really sharp, has good lateral quickness, something that allows him to guard essentially like the 1 through 5. I think, you know, if he's guarding like a 1, maybe even a 2, can be a little bit hectic, but guarding forwards and guarding bigs, Achiuwa can be extremely effective in those positions. Offensively, this guy averaged 9 points per game, 12 and a half after the All-Star break. I don't really see any reason why Achiuwa can't get himself up to 14, 15 points per game. Last season, with that 6.5 rebounds, 9 points, like, I think we can really see a big leap here as we start to trust him more, and especially if he's spacing the floor like he was last season. Like, I think near 40% shooting from 3 might be a little bit too unsustainable. Like, that's a 25-game sample size. A good sample, not a huge one, though. But, like, if he can stay above 35%, there really is no reason why he can't get up to like 14 and a half points per game. And if he's getting like that, if he's getting that jump there, maybe he adds in a rebound per game, 7.5 rebounds per game and a little bit more play time, 14 and a half points per game on 46% shooting from the field, 35% shooting from three. All of a sudden, I think Achiuwa legitimately can be in that most improved player conversation. Might be tough to win that award, especially after the precedent of, such star players like Ja Morant winning that award. Like, it's going to be difficult for Achiuwa to do that, but it's something that I believe that he is capable of. Taking that season, he doesn't need to win that award. Taking this build of a season, like if he gets to 12 or 13 a game on the season, that would be a huge W for the Raptors. This is a player that eventually is going to force his way into the starting lineup if it's not this season. This is a guy who has the potential to be a franchise big for this team. Complements us really well. The exact sort of player Masai Ujiri wants to have in the forward position. The exact sort of player Nick Nurse would want to have in the center position for this team, guarding forwards, guarding bigs. This is like exactly what the Raptors want to build for. Like, if they could create a player, this is what they would want from their big, especially with his ability to space the floor and shoot the three. In terms of his actual ceiling, I think like full ceiling, like as high as he can go. I really can't see an all-star appearance, but this is a guy who could kind of be in that fringe all-star or just under that sort of tier. Like, that's the absolute max. I think, like, bare minimum we're going to see his floor is that he is going to be an excellent starter. Maybe not quite that fringe all-star, but an excellent starting big in the NBA that makes this team a lot better. We're very lucky to have Achiuwa on this team. We're going to have his rights when he needs that extension. He's going to get a decent payday. Nothing crazy, I don't think, but this is a player for the future that is so exciting to have on this team. I am projecting big things for Achiuwa. I love watching him play, and I think he's a big part of the Raptors potentially having immense success in the future. So what do you make of Precious Achiuwa? What do you expect from him this season, and what do you think his full ceiling is in the NBA? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, because that is it for me for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please, if you did enjoy, be sure to drop a like on the video. It goes a long way to supporting me, because when you like the video, it lets YouTube know to recommend this video to more people who have similar interest to you. Only takes you a second to like the video, but it does help me out a ton. And if you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe to Amateur Sports for more Raptors content like this. We're getting close to 12,000 subscribers. We do about 3 videos a week on this channel as well. But if you want more Raptors content from myself, you can check out my second channel, Amateur TV, where the vibes are a little bit different, but it's still the great Raptors content that you like from myself. Don't miss out on that channel. Go subscribe there. Help us on the road to 2,000 subs there. And I'll see you again next time for another video.